Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the Boulder County Commissioners Town Hall. We'll get started in just a couple of moments, but we're going to allow some time while attendees join. Thank you.
I don't see it. Oh, there we go.
Okay, I think we can get started.
Buenas tardes, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We are doing our first town hall of 2025, and we try when it's potential precarious weather to do a virtual session. So just want to appreciate Boulder County staff for doing all the background work so that we can allow folks to jump in virtually. We have in the past gone town by town and city by city, and so we'll continue to do that this year, but that's the reason that we're doing this first one virtually. So just to clarify that, want to appreciate, and I'd love to just hear from our SESCO folks in regards to languages to make sure that everything is set up and you're functioning in regards to language access. Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure that if there's any tech issues at all, that we don't get too far down the program. So I just wanted to appreciate folks for attending and participating with the Boulder County Commissioners. All the commissioners are here this evening. And so welcome to our January 21st, 2025 session. We have an agenda this evening just to talk about and hire a presentation in regards to the topic of homelessness in Boulder County from the county organization. And so we've got some staff that are supporting us, and we'll be here for questions. And then our general just town hall public comment session that we try to offer as an evening option for questions that may not have to do with the particular topic of the presentation, but questions for county government and the Boulder County Commissioners. So I wanted to turn over to Commissioner Levy for any opening remarks that you might have, and then we'll hear from Commissioner Stolzman and then get our presentation going.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And good evening, everyone. And thanks, Commissioner Lochimin, for getting us started here this evening. I'm just going to be very brief. I'm watching the number of attendees continue to tick up. It looks like we're at 105 already. And I think that is really indicative of how important this issue of what Boulder County is doing in response to the crisis of homelessness is to our community. We do continue to hear from many, many residents. I know I do individually. I know that we do as a board. The city councils in all the jurisdictions in Boulder County are fielding questions, concerns, taking actions in response. And so I think it is really important that we are kicking off our town hall meetings in 2025 with this virtual session. And I hope that this format works for everybody. I'll just say for myself, you know, this freezing sub-zero weather that we had this weekend and the necessity of opening emergency shelter space here in the city of Boulder and in Longmont really just highlights the need to take urgent action. And I hope that those of you who are joining us this evening, really have an appreciation at the end of it for what we're trying to do here in Boulder County with the resources that we have. It's not just a problem, in terms of the way it's often represented that our public spaces aren't open and welcoming, but this is a tremendous health threat to the people who are unhoused, and it's affects their dignity, their very existence. And we in Boulder County are taking an approach that focuses on several prongs. I'm not going to delve into what Heidi Grove is going to talk about later, but our long-term focus is on housing people and making sure that we have the resources to move people into housing when they're ready to move into housing. We cannot force people into housing. We cannot force people to get treatment if they have a mental illness, if they have a substance use disorder that is impeding their ability to get housing. What we can do is be ready when they are ready and offer them the resources they need. So I'm eager to hear from Heidi along with everybody else here and hear the questions that you have on any topic that that you may have. As this is one of our regularly scheduled town hall meetings, we always do have a topic of interest, but we welcome questions or comments on anything. And so I'll turn the proverbial microphone over to Commissioner Stolzmann.
Thank you both. Looking forward to hearing from everyone tonight. As was stated, it's just really important for us to be able to receive feedback in these town halls that my colleagues and I have been doing is one way of many ways for that. I'm Ashley Stolzmann. I'm the commissioner from District 3. And for me, getting community feedback is the way that I can do my job and do my job effectively. So please do use the question and answer and put any type of question or feedback that you have in there. It can be related to the presentation. We do these presentations to stimulate ideas and thought and also to be able to share out some of what we're doing, but it's not exclusive to this topic that you could provide us feedback. And we do such a wide range of things that all feedback is really helpful. So please do put, as soon as you're thinking of something, feel free to put it down there in the question and answer. And with so many participants, we may not get to read every single question aloud this evening, but we will see everyone and be able to consider every piece of feedback we receive. So thank you so much for attending and participating, and looking forward to connecting. If you don't find this format to be productive, you can also email us at commissioners@bouldercounty.gov so we can receive your feedback or set up a coffee or some other way of connecting. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you. And so what I would love to do is introduce Heidi Grove. And I'm going to let Heidi give the full official title of the really exciting work that she's doing on behalf of Boulder County and share a presentation with folks. And I do want to just let people know that that the email and also the website, if you haven't gone on there recently, there's a lot of work, not just around the ADA pieces and accessibility, but also just updating of information. We've worked really hard with staff last year to make sure that we have as current of information. So bouldercounty.gov is a really great place for you to take a look at some of these resources and get more information and pass them to your neighbors as you're hearing about this topic this evening. So Heidi Grove, I want to just turn over the presentation and really appreciate you for being with us.
Thank you, commissioners. Good evening, everyone. I want to echo also what the commissioners have said. I want to thank our shelter workers, outreach workers, city and county staff who work tirelessly and fearlessly over the cold snap over the last few days. And I know we do have some of those individuals on the call, so just want to acknowledge them. Next slide, please. So as the commissioners have said, my name is Heidi Grove, and I oversee the Division of Homeless Systems and Coordinated Response, which was originally just Homeless Solutions for Boulder County that was housed under Boulder County Community Services. And with the establishment and creation of the Housing Department in April 2024, the commissioners really wanted to demonstrate their commitment to housing and all things related to under one department. So myself and my team moved over in April of 2024, and the division was established in September of 2024. So we're a fairly new division. We are a mighty team of 3. So it's myself, a coordination specialist, and a data analyst that comprise the division. We work across the county region, the metropolitan Denver area, state, and also interface with our federal partners. We are a member of the Homeless Solutions for Boulder County. That has not changed. Our role is the convener and connector across the county, across the metro area, state, and federally. We also work on a lot of policy, and then our aim is to address root causes from a systemic approach. Next slide. So when we talk about homelessness, the one thing that, and we talk about it from a systems approach, homelessness is the product of failed systems upstream. So the challenge with homelessness is you can name a system and point to that as an example of that being a root cause of homelessness, and you're both right. And that's also not always the case for everyone across the population that is experiencing homelessness across Boulder County. Next slide. So the faces of homelessness. So I wanted to just take a moment to kind of show us the images of what homelessness really looks like and talk about the different types of homelessness. So there's transitional, which is the result of a major life event. Think the death and loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, something that is really catastrophic, a cancer diagnosis. There's episodic, which is multiple episodes of homelessness within 1 year, which also could result of multiple death or major life events, sorry. There's chronic, which is 12 months of continuous homelessness. And then there's also the hidden homelessness. Those are the individuals who are couch surfing, who are, doubled up occupancy, staying with friends and family. And so what we see on the streets really is only about 22% of the entire population that is experiencing homelessness. So if you were to think about 10 people, the 2 people you see on the street really are just 2 individuals, but there's also 8 that you're not seeing. The reasons that people experience homelessness vary widely. Each person's journey involves unique challenges and circumstances. However, the certain common themes that often emerge is lack of affordable housing, income instability, intergenerational poverty, mental and physical health challenges, reentering society after incarceration, foster care involvement, or even military service, systemic racism, job loss, unemployment or underemployment, and not meeting a livable wage. So I want to draw your attention to the individual that is holding the sign at the bottom right of your corner of your screen, where he's holding a sign that says, "I used to be your neighbor." And so a study conducted by Financial Institute Charles Schwab demonstrated that 60% of Americans are 1 paycheck away from falling into homelessness. So if you think about 10 people that 6 of those 10 are 1 paycheck away from falling into homelessness. And we've seen that with record high increases in new and first-time homelessness. And for every $100 of increase in rent, it is a direct correlation to a 9% increase in homelessness. So as we've seen inflation challenges and rental increases rise across the country, we are also seeing an increase in homelessness as a result of those. That said, next slide, please. What we know that solves homelessness is housing and those supportive services. And a few of these examples are some of our permanent supportive housing or supportive housing units that we have in our own backyard in the county. Next slide, please. So Boulder County's homeless system aligns with the federal strategic plan, which recognizes homelessness ends in a home and providing wraparound services that are individualized, supports, and prevents returns to homelessness. So the federal plan, as reflected on your screen, has what they call 6 pillars. There's the foundational pillars, and then there's the solution pillars. And within that foundation is leading with equity, recognizing that homelessness is also a product of historical systemic racism, data and evidence, using data to leverage your shifts across the system. So one prime example is we leverage data back in 2021 and noticed a trend that those that were elder were falling into experiencing homelessness, and they never had before. And a prime reason behind that was incomes were just not keeping up with rental increases, and especially those that are on fixed income. So noticing that data point, we were able to shift and pivot our response to make sure that those that are falling into homelessness, that are elders, have access and touch points to sustainable housing. And then evidence-based, what we know works, what the data shows, which is housing and supports. And then collaboration across all levels. So that's collaboration within our service partners, collaboration with our municipality partners. Prime example is Commissioner Loachman hosts a homeless summit with representatives of electeds across the Boulder County area. And then also Commissioner Loachman participates, and Stoltzman both participate in the Metro Area County Commissioners, making sure that we are partnering with our 7 county partners, and then also partnering with the state and partnering with the feds. The solutions are prevention, which is rental assistance and mediation services to prevent people from experiencing homelessness in the first place. That could also involve our diversion program, which diverts people from the sheltering system. Crisis response, which is street outreach, our coordinated entry across Boulder County, sheltering and bridge housing. And then housing and supports, which is just that, housing, supportive services, housing navigation, and working with landlords to make sure that we are connecting those that need homes with opportunities to have homes. Next slide. So I know that this slide looks like a lot, but it kind of demonstrates the flow and the ebbs and flows of individuals who are experiencing homelessness and being connected to housing. So we have unsheltered homelessness reflected on here, coordinated entry, screening for diversion, making if we can divert you from the sheltering system, we will absolutely do that. And that could be connections to families, that could be connections to friends, that could be rental assistance, whatever we can do to connect you to not enter the homeless space in the first place, we would like to do so. That is and then that's also supported by our outreach workers who are out there connecting with those that are actively experiencing homelessness, connecting them with resources, whether that be a shelter stay, whether that be a bus pass, case management services, all with the aim of a housing exit. And by housing exit, we mean exiting from homelessness into housing, whether that be rapid rehousing, market rate housing. We do have folks that exit into market rate, reunification, connection with other family members, support systems, all that are tied to the resolution of their homeless experience through housing. We also have permanent supportive housing treatment. So those that can be connected to Fort Lyons, project recovery, and then also case management and housing retention. Next slide. So this slide really kind of reflects the amount of working groups and the partners that are connected to this work. So each tie of a working group connects to a partner across the metro region and some of the state partners to work in coordination and collaboration to address connecting to housing resources, emerging issues and trends. Next slide. So this is our most updated county investment in homeless response for 2025. I do want to just acknowledge that we are always looking for ongoing and additional funds, whether that be through state funds, federal funds, even foundation funds. But as of today, what we have secured is $18.2 million, with 4.2 million going to prevention, 5.3 in crisis response, and 8.3 in housing and supports. One thing that is worth noting, in the family homeless system, a vast majority of those investments go into prevention, because the last thing that we want is for families with young children to fall into homelessness. And the other piece to of note is the jurisdiction, whether it's City of Boulder, City of Longmont, or county-wide. As a clarification, that is brick and mortar addresses or those that are tied to geographic, but of anything within the county covers everyone in the county. Next slide. What that slide does not include, and if we just kind of think back to the root causes of failed systems upstream, trying to calculate out the investment across all of those systems would be a lot. So the slide before us really does not include housing development through Boulder County Housing Authority, voucher allocations and management of those vouchers through HUD, and that includes our Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing, Housing Choice Vouchers, Housing Choice Voucher Set-asides, Family Unification Program vouchers, and many, many more housing vouchers. Funding for justice services, including reentry, high systems utilizers activities, navigation services, and our new alternative sentencing facility is also not included in this. All allocations of worthy cause funds, funding allocated to family, excuse me, family and child services, workforce development, crisis assistance and treatment team, the Well-Mind Behavioral Health Navigation team, intellectual and developmental disabilities, mill levy investments, full allocation of our behavioral health funds, the regional housing partnership activities, and mobile home community activities. Next slide. So, as you can see, we have a lot of partners involved. And some of the results of this homeless systems work, we have increased permanent supportive housing units. In 2024, we had 2 new permanent supportive housing facilities opened up with special partnership and thank you to Element, All Roads, Clinica, cities of Boulder, Longmont, of course, counting the state of Colorado and all of our nonprofit partners. We were able to add 95 units new of permanent supportive housing. We also have 3,539 vouchers countywide that are leveraged to help subsidize housing, and that is a 120 voucher increase for this year. And that also includes an increased allocation of our veteran assistance supportive housing. We have an integrated street outreach program that is housing focused and has resulted in housing outcomes directly from unsheltered homelessness to housed. We also have move on and move up strategies. So move on is those that have been allocated and matched to permanent supportive housing, but they're doing really good. And what they really need is just that long-term subsidy. And so we're able to step them down from permanent supportive housing. And then our move up is those that are in rapid rehousing that really need that additional supports. And we leverage our set-aside vouchers to make sure that we keep our voucher system healthy. We also are a member of the Built for Zero cohort for the state of Colorado, and we're the first to be certified in the Denver metro region for quality data and quality scorecard in partnership with all of our service partners, as well as the Veterans Community Project. We also have a full integration of life expertise in homelessness and are working to build out a workforce pipeline with supports for those that are peers. So they have peer-to-peer connection, and then those that are supervising peers to make sure that it is a welcoming space. We launched a countywide data dashboard that you can find at any point in time that shows our number of coordinated entry screens and our number of housing exits. And as of January 2020, we have successfully exited 1,594 individual households through housing. And we are always, as mentioned before, seeking additional funds to support our nonprofit partners. And through this collaborative effort, we've been able to secure millions of dollars of additional state and federal funds to support activities like recovery housing, supportive services, treatment services, street outreach, bridge housing, not to be confused with Bridge House, and many other activities. Next slide. So looking forward to 2025, we'll continue to seek ongoing and additional funds increased systems integration with, we work very closely, our division works closely with the behavioral health roadmap. We are also looking at deeper connections with workforce, the justice system, healthcare system, and many other systems that are connected or byproducts or that homelessness is a byproduct of. We are also looking at an enhanced governance structure for homeless solutions for Boulder County on an executive board level. We just wrapped up a third-party evaluation of the homeless solutions for Boulder County system, and we'll be looking to review and implement the recommendations from that evaluation. Those results should be available publicly next month. We're always looking to enhance our data collection. One of the things that we'll be exploring this year is some emerging stuff around predictive analytics. What's possible? How can we look at leveraging AI predictive analytics to make sure that we are able to intervene before someone has a crisis, and we can have those targeted interventions. The growth of the division, like I said, we are new. We're only 4 months old, and we're a mighty team of 3. So still finding our identity. Continue to support the regional elected officials convening both on a county-wide and also metro-wide. And the picture to your right is a visit we had last month from our federal partners who came into town to spend a day in Boulder County. And through that, we were able to build deeper relationships with our federal partners and look forward to increasing those connections, both on a state and federal level. And with that, commissioners, next slide, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Heidi. Really appreciate the presentation, the information, and really want to acknowledge the work that you and, as you described, a small but mighty team is doing. And I'm hopeful that just hearing some of the information that you shared today will encourage folks to do some more inquiry and, again, get on the website and just learn more about the work. So really appreciate that. And I believe Jen is going to come in as far as support in the background. There's some questions that are coming in, again, for folks who may have jumped in after the beginning. You can use the Q&A to ask any questions that you want about the topic or just to the commissioners around Boulder County Government and Services. And a reminder that bouldercounty.gov is the website, but also that if you have questions, and for whatever reason you can't stay on your device for another hour this evening, we totally understand. And you can always email to commissioners@bouldercounty.gov. And that goes to Jennifer Churchill, who's also on this evening helping. And she'll direct that to either one of us as a commissioner who might be a lead on specific work connected to the project, or to staff to make sure that we respond to you that way as well, to set up a meeting, or as Commissioner Sullivan said, set up a coffee or a meeting with all of us, et cetera. So just want to make sure for folks who weren't on at the very beginning that you know that that's an option too if you can't stay on this evening. And so I'm going to turn it over to staff to help in regards to questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Lochamin. I'm also going to share Heidi's contact info in the chat for everyone so they can see how to get in touch with her. Our first question that came in this evening is, why can't we force people into housing?
I'm happy to take that question because I think that was something I said in my opening comments. I didn't know how we were going to actually do this. Jump in, raise your hand first, hit the button, whatever. And Kevin, I'll do my best to explain that. People, so I think a lot of the questions that have come up in the Q&A are around issues that are really law enforcement issues, where people may be breaking the law, and those are treated as law enforcement issues. When someone is unhoused, they're generally not really breaking a law. Just the status of being unhoused is not in and of itself illegal, despite what the Supreme Court said in the Grants Pass case. It's not illegal. And so we cannot, as government, force somebody to do something that takes away their liberty when there hasn't been due process, but when they haven't actually committed an offense. And so the best we can do is make services available, hope that when they're ready to receive those services, that they will receive them. There have been some questions in there about the outreach and the outreach workers. I saw some stats some time ago around the number of touch points it takes with a person who has been chronically unhoused before they really are trusting and ready for those services. So our staff is okay. And Heidi, I was going to say 17, and then I didn't want to go out on a limb, and Heidi put that in the chat. It is 17 touch points. So we try to meet people when they're ready for it. But unless they have broken the law in some way, then they are free. They have to be at liberty to make decisions they want to make for their own lives. There are some exceptions. If a person has such a severe mental illness that they can be put on a 72-hour hold for self-evaluation, et cetera. But that's not really what we're talking about in most instances. And then I think I'll just also sort of preemptively address the issue of those that are breaking, primarily it's going to be municipal code laws around trespass or littering or things like that. And we have finite space in the county jail. It is full, it is over capacity. And so our county sheriff and our law enforcement personnel have to make decisions, hard decisions about who should take up that precious bed space in our jail. And we have a jail full of people that have committed quite serious offenses. And so I hope we would all agree that we don't want to dedicate very, very expensive and very scarce resources on people who, are committing sort of, offenses that, detract from quality of life, but don't really warrant that kind of deprivation of liberty.
Anything to add? Other commissioners? Okay. Next question. There's a couple of questions actually related to the Boulder Creek path. And I think you might have touched on some of this already, Commissioner Levy. What is the plan to remove open drug use from the Boulder Creek path? And what is the plan to prevent people from using the Boulder Creek path as a place to set up long-term camps and defecate along the creek?
I mean, I can keep going. I don't have all the answers, but that there are a lot of questions in there. I was following them as they came rolling in, and they're great questions. Some of these are really questions for the city of Boulder and city of Boulder law enforcement, and because we as Boulder County, while we try to serve with housing and services everybody in Boulder County, regardless of where they live or whether they're in a city or not in a city, but the things around the Boulder Creek and open drug use and preventing homeless camps, those are activities that the Boulder Police Department and address. Our outreach people, and maybe Heidi can address a little bit about exactly what the outreach teams do. They will make contact with people who are engaged in unlawful and risky behaviors, especially in public and especially where children might be present. But many of these issues that have come up in the chat are issues that I know the city of Boulder is working very hard on.
I'll just add a little, it's somewhat redundant of what Commissioner Levy said, but meant to support, just to reiterate some of the points that she's made. People's liberty is protected under the Constitution, and we really don't want the government not following due process. And so, as Commissioner Levy stated, like there are a number of questions here about criminal activity, which should be reported to law enforcement so that law enforcement can use due process and investigate and look into the issue and then take action. So for example, within this question that was couched around the Boulder Creek path, there's some question around petty theft and bike theft. So in that example, the sheriff, the district attorney, and I have met with Boulder council members and with Boulder Police Department around bike theft. And the district attorney is committed to prosecuting bike theft, but people have to be arrested in order for him to follow up on the law enforcement activity. So if you have not reported a stolen bike, then the police cannot investigate a stolen bike and cannot find who to ticket so that the district attorney can prosecute the bike theft. And we do have evidence in Boulder County that when the district attorney goes after a bike theft ring or organized crime, that he's successful in mitigating against it and enforcing penalties. So there are a lot of steps there. We've talked about some more proactive communication to the community about making sure you lock your bike, making sure you lock your garage, so that we're not drawing a target. And you'll see in the news from time to time, there's coverage on that. There was some coverage in the town of Erie, encouraging people to lock their garages, lock their cars. But it really is important that if there is a crime, that you report it and make sure that you document that so that the law enforcement officials and then the district attorney can follow up on those things and make a change. If the bike theft is not reported, then we have no way of investigating it, and then we have no way of following up on that. So just to basically support what Commissioner Levy said, this is a lot of comment in the chat around criminal behavior and criminal activity in law enforcement. And in the city of Boulder or any jurisdiction that is a city, that law enforcement agency is going to be enforcing those local laws. In unincorporated Boulder County, the sheriff would be doing that, the sheriff's deputies. So in those cases, you can call the non-emergency number 441-4444, and it'll be routed to the right law enforcement agency.
Okay. Commissioner Lochamin, did you want to add anything?
No, I was actually just gonna, it sounded like there was a question around the outreach. And so I wondered if maybe Heidi Grove could speak to a couple of those questions. And if you were going to read them out
Yes.
for people who aren't reading it, that's great.
Yeah. A couple of questions came in, Heidi, about how many outreach workers are there? How often are they doing outreach? And how do those outreach workers interact with law enforcement and report criminal activities?
So
Heidi?
the number of outreach workers I would have to get back to you on. But outreach usually happens at least Monday through Friday, and in some cases, 7 days a week, depending on the organization. And we do have outreach workers that do partner with law enforcement through a co-response model. So it depends on what type of outreach we're talking about specifically. So prime example, we do cross-jurisdictional outreach. That's part of the outreach collaborative on a county level. So we, like the Longmont LEAD program, works in partnership with traditional homeless outreach. And then the same in the city of Boulder, our co-responders across the county connect with our traditional homeless outreach workers as well.
Thank you, Heidi. Another question that came in is, doesn't the county have any permanent supportive housing facilities?
Go ahead, Heidi.
We do. I mentioned some of them as a success towards the end. We have Bluebird, we have Zinnia, we have the Suites in Longmont. So Zinnia's in Longmont. The Suites is in Longmont. We also have Lee Hill, and then we also have Bluebird Boulder. Then we also have dedicated PSH, permanent supportive housing units across the Boulder County region. So a certain percentage of housing of new build is dedicated to permanent supportive housing, whether that be with Boulder Housing Partners, Golden West, Raleigh Flats. There's quite a lot.
Yeah, I might just add that so Heidi mentioned the developments that are dedicated to permanent supportive housing, and then the more scattered sites that she mentioned. Many of them are in buildings where you would not even know that those units were dedicated and set aside for previously unhoused people. And I can give as an example from when I served on the board of Boulder Housing Partners. We bought two existing apartment buildings, one right on Broadway, North Broadway, and one just off North Broadway near the Washington School co-housing, and set aside several units in those buildings for people who were unhoused, so with vouchers and with services that go along with that. And then at the 30th and Pearl development, there were a number of units, I don't remember the exact number right now, that were set aside for people that use project-based vouchers to house people who were previously unhoused. So I think you'd be surprised at the number of units that are actually available throughout Boulder County.
Okay, next question is, has guaranteed/universal basic income been considered?
I'm happy to speak to that, and others might want to chime in and add additional information. But thanks, Dawn, for the question. There's a couple different, and the names and the titles are described differently, but as far as direct cash assistance, if you haven't seen the program that came out in 2024 that was connected to the American Rescue Plan, the ARPA funding and COVID funding relief monies, that was a decision that came from the community engagement process in looking at us locally as Boulder County and our residents to find out what were some of those needs. And that was one of the pieces that came up. So that program got rolled out in 2024, and it's from the Boulder County side is $300 for each family who was able to qualify under a certain amount of parameters. And there was a lot of work from the staff side to be able to get that program going, and that's for 2 years. And I say from the Boulder County side because the city of Boulder has their own program as well with different parameters. I will invite folks to look at the program at Boulder County is called Nurturing Families. And so you can find that if you just put Nurturing Families into your web browser, Boulder County, and it'll give you some of that information if you have more details and information about that particular program. And like all good solutions and looking at how we might be able to support individuals in this particular one of really supporting families most in need, the question will be, how do we continue that program if that's a decision that is made by the Board of County Commissioners to look at that. And so that is another piece of what we are facing just in regards to human services, the needs, the increase in inflation and prices and grocery prices and all the different pieces that really are affecting a lot of folks in our communities.
I think the only thing I would add on that is that the city of Denver took a completely different approach than what the city of Boulder and Boulder County took. Our approach here in Boulder County in the city was families with young children, knowing that at that young age, that is when your additional money has the best chance of really changing the future for that child, for that family. Denver did do, I think it was also with ARPA money, direct cash assistance to unhoused people. And they've published several reports on the outcome of that. And they tried with different methodologies and different amounts, doing one lump sum and doing it monthly. And there are some pretty impressive results on helping people actually get housing, helping people get enough of a reserve so that they could go back to work, et cetera. So, I appreciate the question because as we talk about, well, what is at bottom, what's the problem here? And many people, as Heidi said at the outset, it's some life event that comes along that maybe disrupts their job. It's a health thing. It's a change in family status. And if they just had a little bit of a cushion in their finances, they would not have become unhoused in the first place. And once you become unhoused, it's increasingly difficult to then become housed again. So there definitely is a role for income supports here. It's, as Commissioner Loachman said, it's always a question of resources and, whether we've got enough resources for everything.
Thank you, Commissioner Levy. Okay, the next question is from someone who is renting to some folks in the housing assistance program. He was curious about getting a late payment from the city, which makes it discouraging as a property owner trying to help those out when the city doesn't commit to their side of the rent money. Can you elaborate on why such an issue would occur?
Excuse me, Susanna Lopez Baker here, Boulder County Housing Authority Executive Director. I'm happy to chime in here on the Public Housing Authority lens, who does issue those voucher and voucher payments to landlords. First, Kevin, thank you for being a landlord interested in partnering with the program and partnering in the program. We really appreciate landlords that are willing to do that. Typically, that happens because we're getting a late payment from HUD. And so we're waiting for HUD to pay us so then we can pay our landlords. And so that's usually the administrative factor. We really work hard to avoid that, at least at the Boulder County Housing Authority. And I'm confident that the other housing authorities do the same. We really try to avoid that. But sometimes we get late payments from HUD and then double payments. And so it's just sometimes really hard to align all of the funding sources we need.
Thank you, Susanna. Okay. Next question is, what is the percentage of homeless people in Boulder County who were residents in Boulder County at the time they lost housing versus already homeless migrating to Boulder County?
I think that's a Heidi Grove question. Although I think I can say that there's a lot of data on the website for homeless solutions for Boulder County, but Heidi, go ahead.
I think it's a great question, and I also think that so there was a study done in partnership with the Veterans Affairs on the touch points across the metro region of someone who fell into homelessness, and it was 8 touch points across the 7 counties. And so we do know that there is movement and mobility across the metro region. I can pull those data, but those data are reflected on the dashboard, and it's a little box at the top that says, how long have you been in Boulder County? And you can see those who are newer to the county or coming from one of our metro regions, and then those that have been in the county for a very long time. That said, our data shows that there's even differences within our own county. So Longmont tends to have way more long-term individuals who fell into homelessness in Longmont, and Boulder's a little different. So it just depends.
Thank you, Heidi.
So Heidi, I think that everybody in this Zoom meeting has all clicked to the dashboard at the same time, so it's crashing. I was trying to pull the data up for the most recent statistics on that. So just be patient if you've tried to go to the dashboard while we're on the computer. It will reload. We just have overloaded it at the second. But you can look at the data and see that the majority of people experiencing homeless have not originally lived in Boulder County pretty consistently.
Thank you, Commissioner Stolzman. Thank you. An additional question is the $18.2 million investment in homelessness for 2024 or for multiple years? And if multiple years, how many years are included in the $18.2 million investment? Heidi, do you know?
I don't see Heidi jumping off mute. That figure she put up was for 2025, and it's 1 year, and it's very similar to the funding level that was done in 2024.
Yeah, and
Thank you.
I think Heidi said this when we had the slide up, but that does not include housing resources. So the funds that we have put from our general fund and from other sources into constructing housing or acquiring housing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Someone asked about trying to help an acquaintance get into coordinated housing. They made some phone calls and went by the building on Arapahoe and have been unable to get assistance. What is the best way to go about getting some assistance some housing assistance for someone?
So coordinated entry in the city of Boulder is housed at All Roads Shelter off North Broadway. And I know Mike's listening in. Mike, if you can put that address in the chat, that would be great. So they can go anytime Monday through Friday, and Mike can put those information also in the chat. And then in the city of Longmont, we have set times, and I can pull that off our website as it's reflected on our website.
Thank you. One additional question is, what is the city doing about a few violent homeless folks in the city? Folks who may be unwilling or unable to enter a shelter or housing program.
You know, I think this might be one of those law enforcement issues that I was referring to earlier. And I try to watch these things pretty closely. And I am our representative on the high utilizer group. I was our representative, Commissioner Loachman, and I rotated. So I was off and now back on that. And that is a group of people, they are deemed high utilizers because they have frequent contacts with law enforcement, frequent trips maybe to the emergency room, frequent visits to our county jail. They're very high utilizers of services. And the law enforcement personnel, whether it's the City of Boulder Police, Boulder County, or any of the other police departments that come into contact, really know, and we have a working group as well, an operations group as well, that know who each of these individuals are, and we get a report when any of them has a police contact as to what the reason for the contact was, what has happened to them. And you know, for those who have committed an offense against another person, and they most likely will be charged with that offense and be taken to jail. So what I was referring to earlier about people that we don't want to use jail space for, it's people who do things, just minor offenses, minor property offenses, but those who commit any sort of a violent offense against another person are typically arrested and taken to jail and prosecuted for that offense.
Thank you, Commissioner Levy. Jen is asking, how can the public support your good work?
I'm happy to just share what I think we might all have an opinion. I've been trying to, because we have so many questions that I know we were all trying not to answer everyone, but I would encourage my colleagues to jump in. For me, one of the pieces right now is we had about 100 people on this call, which is really great. And there's 330,000 residents in Boulder County. And we have a lot of folks that live and or work or vice versa within Boulder County as a region. And so how many of our neighbors are coworkers, maybe friends, or people that we're just meeting in different spaces don't yet know about Boulder County's services and the resources? I would be so surprised if someone on this call didn't learn or hear something new from Heidi Grove's presentation, because there is so much work happening and the different programs and the grants that folks are consistently applying for and just looking for opportunities outside of ARPA funds and outside of just existing tax monies and all the different pieces. And so my encouragement will continue to be who's not in this room virtually tonight, and how do we now, once we know, we have a responsibility and a significant opportunity to share that information. And so for me, that's always going to be my ask, and just making sure that you all are helping us get to the groups. And Heidi Grove and Susana Lopez Baker, who are both on, and their teams consistently do presentations with their city councils. So there's all around the region, they're doing road shows and have been doing a lot of work here locally and regionally. So those opportunities to share information are always open as well.
I think what I would add to that is just be involved. And, you know, we do these monthly town halls either virtually or generally, actually, we're in person. We have the monthly comment opportunity on the first Thursday of the month at 9:30. That's in our commissioners' hearing room and remote. And as an elected official, you know, I want to hear from you. I want to know what's on your mind. I want to know what your concerns are. I want to try to answer your questions. If there's something about what we're doing that doesn't make sense to you, I want to know what that is, try to explain it. If I can't explain it, then maybe it doesn't make sense. So I think, you know, I think we're really fortunate to have an active, engaged, you know, group of people here in Boulder County. And I would say continue to do that. And so that we know that this, you know, what the issues are, and we know that homelessness is an issue. And, you know, and then I guess I would also say, you know, these issues are expensive. And so, you know, we do from time to time ask the good voters of Boulder County to allow us to use more funding. And I hope that you would appreciate the value of what we're doing and you know, support those requests that we make.
Thank you. Both great answers. And just to augment them a tiny bit, one thing I would encourage would be talking to your neighbors, talking to your coworkers about the issue. When I look in the chat log, it looks like we won't get to every single question tonight, just because, you know, we still have 84 open questions, and you know, we have staff that we need to let go home at 7. So we likely won't get through everything. But when I look at like time 5:53, we have a community member looking to promote more mutual aid groups, distributing goods, hot food, supplies, life-saving gear. And then, you know, shortly after, another community member commenting about discouraging in-migration of unhoused people, that they've heard that the word is out, and asking why we're giving out free tent sleeping bags and things like that. So I think the community conversation needs to continue in this space. And the way that happens is truly by you talking to your neighbors, talking to your coworkers, your colleagues about the issue. We are doing our best to provide services that we have seen evidence to support that it does help folks exit homelessness. And Heidi put those numbers up about homeless exits, but nothing about serving the community is final or finite or truly like this is the only way and how we must do it. So through community engagement and what we all want to do collectively together, like that is how we will serve the community, and we'll find that by community dialogue and discourse.
Thank you, Commissioner Stolzman. One thing that's definitely coming up is the core issue of housing affordability in the county for those homeless and those who are only one paycheck away, and others who are struggling to pay the bills and keep their home. So this resident would like to know, what are you doing to address housing affordability as a whole in the county, in the cities especially, as jobs tend to be there? The new construction do not seem built for affordability, and this has to change.
I'm happy to jump in and just respond to a couple different pieces. There's really two. I think if we got into that community dialogue that Commissioner Stolzman is talking about and sat together similar to what we did in the housing summit early in 2024, the definition of affordability, affordable housing, and what that means for Boulder County would be a really very interesting conversation. And that's one of the crux of the issue, is because there are so many different ways to get to the problem. I do think that we all agree that we have a housing crisis. I believe it's connected to housing inventory. I also believe that there's a lot of different ways that we can get to that outside of some of the most typical and most thought of and most talked about ways. I do want to make sure folks know that we are in the middle of our implementation in regards to what Commissioner Levy was talking about in taxes, of what voters approved in November 2023 here in Boulder County for an affordable and attainable housing tax. this is super important from the standpoint, some of our neighbors were not able to get housing taxes passed even last year in the midst of even more increasing prices and need. And so we really have an opportunity to do some great work. It is not going to be the only solution, and it certainly is not enough money to meet all of the needs, but it does allow us to leverage funds and opportunities, do some innovation, and look at the way that we provide affordable housing and housing that also addresses the continuum of all of the different pieces that we're talking about when we talk about housing. So some of that's a little bit broad, but I do want to make sure folks know that we're also positioned in a really great place to be able to address some of these issues of affordability. I will share with folks too, in regards to the other group that Heidi Grove mentioned in her presentation, that I will be leading in 2025 as an outcome from your regional elected officials who got together last year as well to talk about this topic and what we might be able to do regionally to eliminate homelessness, is now a focus in 2025 in regards to recent state legislation here in Colorado on backyard cottages and accessory dwelling units, and really looking at how we make those more accessible, what the barriers are, what are current zoning pieces, planning processes, all the real barriers to allow folks to take some of those opportunities to then again be part of the housing continuum. It is not the only solution, but be part of that and address what we tend to hear a lot about in unincorporated Boulder County, of folks being in a home where they cannot now afford to downsize or to on a fixed income. They're concerned about property taxes or HOA fees that have increased so dramatically, all the different pieces. And so again, what are some of the focuses? That one piece is not going to do it all, but I really feel very confident and very good about being in a county that is looking at these different the different slices and putting them together. And that was really part of our commitment in our strategic priorities around housing, and making that decision to create a housing department last year. And we are moving forward, and our Boulder County Housing Authority department is doing some fantastic work and really addressing some of the issues that were pre-existing and are now really looking at how countywide we can address some of these issues too.
We are not going to have enough time to answer all the questions. I'm just looking here, 6:34. I guess we do have a little more time. I wanted to jump down, Jen, per your invitation, to jump into other things if we want.
Absolutely.
I'm not wanting. I want to just get to one thing. Somebody had a comment there about, many of the unhoused people that you see in downtown Boulder, for instance, are single men, and question about what percentage of the homeless population they are. I don't know the answer to that question, but I do want to just mention that, there are a lot of invisible unhoused people, and those are the folks that never get counted. The people who are couch surfing, who are doubling up, who may be sleeping in their car. And many of those, or get a voucher and are able to stay in a hotel, but many of those are families, and they are families with children. And we know from something called the McKinney-Vento Act, which is a federal law that requires school districts to identify children in their schools who are unhoused. And we know that those numbers have gone up dramatically since the pandemic, and so that represents, a source of instability in the life of that child and in the family, and that source of instability and the stress that can come from having the financial precarity really produces a kind of a toxic situation for the child and that family. And so while much of the focus of the public is on those who are visible and maybe breaking the law or making it unpleasant to coexist with them in public spaces, we have a lot of people, a lot of families that need help. And we're, through the work that Commissioner Lochimin is leading with the homeless, the regional partnership on homelessness and what we're hoping to do through implementation of the affordable and attainable housing tax is to create the housing that will allow the unseen, uncounted homeless to move into stability.
Thank you, Commissioner Levy. One question we haven't talked about yet came in regarding drug use and what resources are being considered by Boulder County to address addiction and mental health. This resident feels that housing does not address that root issue.
I see we all came off mute.
Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead. So I've been talking a lot.
So I'm happy to start. So we partner with a few agencies, but primarily with Mental Health Partners for mental health services for community members. We basically fund a series of partners for mental health and addiction recovery services. And there is a new addiction recovery center that's coming online in Louisville to expand some services for community members. But it's basically that the county takes funding, applies for federal funding. We could do a whole night, just like Heidi did, with slides and presentation on mental health and addiction services, similar to what Heidi's done, with different staff that could tell more about that. But that's the basic premise, is that we partner with community partners and provide funding to them to provide services for community members.
Thank you, Commissioner Stolzman. Another question regarding assisting. One resident would like to know, what can we do to support the local unhoused population? Do donations of food or etc. help or enable?
I think that's at the crux of a community conversation and a crux of a question, but there's certainly a need for support. I have seen recently the shelters in Longmont and City of Boulder requesting financial support. It is, to live in our community and pay people living wages to work is expensive. So the nonprofits are looking for support and help, and that's where I would start if I were you. And I think my colleagues would agree that that's a good place to start, is looking at the nonprofit agencies that you see value in their work and you have a great deal of confidence and respect in, and donate to them. And I would look on their websites to see what they need. Most of them, financial donation is most helpful, but some of them have other supplies and things they need. Our food banks are in need of support with federal funding decreases that we've seen and declining COVID funding, food assistance, emergency assistance, rental assistance to the partners like EFA and Sister Carmen would be a great place to start. The homeless shelters in your community would be a great place to start. So I would look to the nonprofits that you find to be providing the services that you most value and support them.
I think the only thing I would add to that very comprehensive answer is that I think there's an element of the question that is about, well, which is better, to work on the systemic issues or the immediate needs. And I think it's a both and. And, the immediate needs, warm clothing, food, that's kind of a humanitarian issue. But for Boulder County, and that's, as Commissioner Stolzman said, private philanthropic funding might be the best source of funding for that sort of thing. But for using public funds, taxpayer funds, our philosophy in Boulder County has been to really look more systemically at things that we can do to change the trajectory of a person's life, to get them into housing, to get them the services they need. So we don't expend funds on those kinds of immediate needs that may help a person, be very important and help a person stay alive. But we're more focused on the systemic aspects.
One of the residents has asked, could we discuss homelessness in Nederland? So what are the differences, Heidi, or commissioners? What are the differences? What are the supports that exist perhaps up in Nederland for the homeless population?
Commissioners, would you like me to take that one?
You can get us started, Heidi.
So we actually, and our partner is actually on the call, we have a outreach partner that goes up to Netherland and literally goes into the U.S. Forest Service to connect with individuals who are camping. And next week, thanks to our federal partners, we are having a meeting with the United States Forest Service to start talking about how to really partner on a federal level as well. I will just want to acknowledge Focus Reentry. They've been able to connect already folks to housing directly in NED because of their outreach efforts. So we did have an effort that ended up having to get revamped with Pastor Hansen stepping down. And we relaunched it fully this past summer, and they continue to support even with the snow setting in the mountain communities. And I do encourage for more detailed information to reach out to Molly East at Focus Reentry.
Heidi, I'll just add, when we go to each different local jurisdiction, we hear about sort of the different ways homelessness can look in different parts of the region. And so I just thank Commissioner Loachman for being the lead on sort of the regional coordination effort, because while there are some underlying root causes and some things that are consistent across the county, there are regional differences in activity that we're seeing and in solutions. And so trying to coordinate to not move people around from place to place, but also address specific issues. And when we go to some jurisdictions, some people will feel, you know, that they don't have a good grasp on the magnitude of homelessness in their area. And Heidi and her team have done a nice job of being able to outline from our perspective when we interact with individuals where they reside, and we're able to point back to their home jurisdiction and sort of report out to the different municipalities on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Stolzman. A resident asks, is camping in public against the law? Are there laws being changed to avoid addressing the vast crimes being committed by homeless? When does one human's freedom impede so much on another's that they no longer have the privilege of freedom? Also, how is the homeless individual's self-respect, dignity, and self-responsibility addressed through these programs?
So maybe I'll start us off on this, and I think we might all want to comment on it. So, you know, that whether or not sleeping on public land is allowed is really a jurisdiction by jurisdiction case. And a lot of the questions have, you know, come here from, it sounds like, residents of the city of Boulder, and city of Boulder does not allow camping in public spaces, sleeping, you know, with any sort of a shelter on you, even if it's a blanket or an article of clothing. So it's really a question for each jurisdiction to answer as to what they allow and what they don't allow. I think there were some other questions embedded in that, but that's, you know, that is really the answer. And there was a Supreme Court case recently that I alluded to that overturned a decision that came out of the Ninth Circuit that said that you could not criminalize sleeping outside if there were no place else for a person to go, if there wasn't a shelter space available for them or someplace for them to be as an alternative. And the United States Supreme Court did overturn that. And so I believe that the city of Boulder is now engaged in more active enforcement of their camping ban. In unincorporated Boulder County, we have rules against unauthorized camping on our parks and open space land, the land that we have purchased with taxpayer money to make available for recreational and habitat preservation. And so we do have that prohibition on our parks and open space land. We do not have a general prohibition against sleeping in county right of way.
Jen, I'm going to try to rapid fire answer a couple questions if you're okay with
Go
that.
for it. Absolutely.
So there's a question about why doesn't Longmont have a shelter? And so the county funds the 2 shelters that we have in our community, both the Boulder Shelter, All Roads, and the Hope Shelter in Longmont. So there's public funding that goes into both of those. We've calculated our contribution to those shelters on a per bed basis. So they get different amounts of funding, but it's because they have a different amount of beds that they provide. And then the shelters also tend to apply for competitive grant funding. So we have been providing out of the general fund as direct support that's non-competitive to both shelters. And then we additionally have funded them through competitive grants also, and for the worthy cause funding, which Heidi mentioned is not included in that $18 million support. So if Indy, if you had more on why you don't feel that the Hope Shelter is a solution in Longmont, looking forward to an email to the commissioners at bouldercounty.gov for more information on what that comment is about. There's a question about identification and helping people that are unhoused get identification. So if people go through coordinated entry, this is a service that coordinated entry, which the county provides funding to support, can help with. People have to be willing participants in getting their identification restored. And I have a number of success stories, and it's very satisfying when someone finally does get their identification. The most satisfying one from last year was a gentleman named Dane who was looking to get his passport recovered. He had lost all his paperwork, and kudos to our support staff in the county and also at All Roads for working through that with him and following it through so he was able to get his passport and go back home to Maine where his family was so he could travel there to be with them. But lots of great stories like that. And so that is a service we provide to help people get their identification. And then just this is a blanket answer and really supporting what Commissioner Loachman and Levy have already said, but there are a number of questions in here about illegal activity. And so there's a question, is bike theft illegal activity? Yes. There's a question in here about, breaking different laws and how illegal is it, this, that, or the other. Like these things are things as residents and as business owners, you don't have to have the law memorized. If you're concerned and you feel that there's something funny going on and you think it may be a violation of the law, you can contact the non-emergency number for our dispatch, which is that 303-444. 441-4444, sorry about that. And report what you see. And so it's sort of the see something, say something. So it's not your job to completely understand exactly what the law is and cite exactly which rule is being broken. That's what the local law enforcement officials will do when you make the contact.
Could I just jump in on that? Just a couple of those, and I will try to keep it short too. I know I've said a couple of times, well, we're not going to put people in jail for some of these more minor offenses. That doesn't mean that there are no consequences. And so within the city of Boulder, they have a municipal court, they have a community court where, there will be consequences, but they're more in a supportive way to try to assist the person with whatever it is that is the reason they're engaged in this activity. So I don't want to leave anybody with the impression that there are no consequences. And then, the situation with Hope is, that they don't actually have a facility. They have two different locations, a church, and I think maybe they're both churches on different sides of town that they rotate back and forth to. And so they don't actually have a permanent location the way All Roads does. It's very, very expensive. I know they've talked about wanting that, but getting a facility, whether they buy it or even lease it and set it up permanently, requires far more financial resources than Hope is able to muster at this time.
Commissioners, would you like to try to do a couple more questions, or would you like to move to closing comments? I know we have many, many questions that didn't get answered. There's a lot of interest in this topic and a lot of different viewpoints. How would we like to proceed?
Well, I wondered, yeah, thank you. If Heidi, it seemed like there was a couple that were really for Heidi around data and some of those pieces. If you want to just scroll through, if you'd be willing to do that. And then I also wanted to, there was one question in regards to the AHT funding, the Affordable and Attainable Housing Tax funding. And so if there's questions around with that tax and the ballot language that passed had a piece of that funding for development that could be reconstruction or construction, it could be renovation, it could be rehab, it could be a whole lot of different ways to address the housing issues in community around development costs, entitlement costs, et cetera. And then there was another piece of that funding that was focused on supportive services, but specifically for housing supportive services. And so the decision on that, after working with a whole lot of different experts in housing, our regional housing partnership, and other organizations that were part of those different conversations and public meetings that we had with staff to hear different proposals, et cetera. So I just invite folks again to look at the website in regards to those resources. But some of folks who are looking for specifically, because there's some questions around permanent supportive housing, if that is something you want to have done in the city of Boulder as a resident and constituent concerned about that, then you could go to City of Boulder and talk with their council about that and so that they know that that's where you would like that funding, because there's a direct allocation for development to the city of Boulder and then a direct allocation to the city of Longmont. And so that would be the kind of the next step of where you could also ask for and share some of the concerns that you have and what you would like to see for your community around permanent supportive housing. So I just wanted to at least address a portion of that question. And Heidi, I don't know if that gave you an opportunity to kind of scroll through questions.
Commissioner Loachman, if I could take a start at it, just some of them I had pulled up on the dashboard. So there was a question about the number of exits of homelessness. So it's about 300 a year that I see on the dashboard that you can also look at online. And our point in time count for the most recent January was just over 700 people. And so there are, both of those pieces of data. There's a lot of asterisks explaining all of what those numbers mean, but those were two pieces that I saw scrolling through looking for the data. And if you just do a search for Boulder County Homeless Dashboard, one of the first links that'll pop up will be the dashboard that Heidi's team puts together. So you can look through the data in more detail and find the pieces that you're looking for.
There's one question in here that I think I can answer very quickly. It has to do with the fees in lieu that the city of Boulder collects, and I think other communities that have set up inclusionary housing ordinances also offer an opportunity for the developer to pay money instead of doing the housing themselves. And the question is, is it monitored and does it go to housing? And the answer is yes. It goes into a special fund, and then within that jurisdiction, it is dedicated to housing. It does not go to support the general fund. I'm also looking for quick questions with quick answers.
Well, and I wonder if we're just not gonna be able to get through all of them, but I really appreciate the participation. I'm gonna ask commissioners if you want to do some closing statements, but also Heidi, because you are in it as our expert, and really appreciate the kudos that have been in the chat too for our staff. So Heidi, maybe if you want to start with any closing comments or with the invitation and ask about people who are asking how they can get involved and how they can support the work.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners, for hosting this kickoff and this conversation. I know it's very important to all of us, and it's hard work. And I do want to just kind of echo and reiterate what you're saying across the board is, our nonprofit partners do amazing work. They are deemed as some of the top experts in the state in this work. And so any support you can provide them, we greatly appreciate it. I know they do. And if you have any specific data questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. And I can either point you in the right direction, or we can maybe look and see if it's something that we can readily access. And with that, I will turn it back over to the commissioners. Thank you all for coming, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Heidi. And I also want to acknowledge Heidi's work at a state level and national level. This is really important, the relationships that you have been able to build and bring in for us to be able to host regionally with elected officials around the region and different organizations. I just want to make sure that folks know that picture at Zinnia was not just Boulder County staff. It was a lot of the partners and the elected officials that serve different folks that are on this call as well. But to be able to have the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness here in Boulder County and build those relationships is helping us with our relationships with HED and other folks that are doing work connected to everything housing and solutions. So thank you, Heidi. Commissioners?
Well, I'm happy to very quickly, seeing we have 4 minutes left here, just try to close us out. I want to just thank again so many people for coming and joining us and asking your questions. I know we didn't get to all of them. There were a lot of questions that I think if people become more familiar with our web page for Homeless Solutions for Boulder County and know that we have that dashboard around the work that's being done, you may find your questions answered. And I would encourage you also to use our email address. You can reach all three of us at commissioners at bouldercounty.gov. And that goes into a monitored mailbox. Our staff will answer the questions that they can, and they pass those along to us as well. So that's another way that you can get your questions to us and get them answered. So thanks to staff for supporting us tonight. Thanks especially to our Spanish language interpreters who are trying to keep up with some very rapid talk and responses. And I hope everyone has a nice evening.
Commissioner Stelzman?
Thank you all for participating tonight, and I do believe the content of the questions and comments that is in there is going to help us do a better job as commissioners. So thank you for taking your evening to spend it with us and to help us do a better job providing services for the community. If things come up on this topic or other topics, please do connect with us. It is very helpful to hear how things are going in your neighborhood and see when we've made changes, if people are starting to see changes, so we can track how we're doing in real time and focus on continuous improvement. And so with that, I'll just encourage to continue to participate and let folks know that while this particular town hall, people did pretty well stay on the topic that was posted as the agenda item. Our town halls are open for any comment all year long. And so if this time of the evening works well for you, please come to a future town hall with your questions or comments or feedback on any topic that's county related. And then we also have the open comment session. Commissioner Lochemin stated an email is a great way to give us feedback. Thanks so much.
Great, thank you both. And I just want to say thank you to folks for participating and just joining us for this first town hall. We're really committed to serving all of our residents, and this is one way that we can hear the questions. And I just want to make sure folks know that the questions that are in here also really serve staff in regards to the work and the conversations that they bring to us as well. So thank you everybody for participating. Staff, thank you.